The messenger journey that lasted many years over many countries and many seas was involved, of course, with great dangers and hardship during the travel, especially for a Jew, and especially for a poor Jew, lack of means, and more for that for a Jew that is observing the Torah. The adventures of the messenger started already when he got out of his own city, because the road between Jerusalem, Hebron, Safed, and Tiberias, and also between the port cities Jaffa and Akko, or between them to Alexandria in Egypt, from where many messengers were sent to their destination, was not safe at all. For example, Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai, who went on the representative of Hebron in the year 1753 and went through the Sinai desert to Egypt, suffered and was subjected from the violence of the Arabs of the village of Khalkhul between Jerusalem and Hebron. He was also subjected to a violence by the villages of Sumsum between Hebron to Gaza, and he actually said that those people are not even humans; they're like scorpions and snakes. Another messengers, Rabbi Yaakov Shaltiel Nino, who went from Safed in the name of Safed, and in the year 1840 was robbed by Druze between Jaffa to Akko, and only by way of miracle from God he survived death. During the Mamluk and the Ottoman period, the Jewish communities in the land of Israel maintained a very strong connection with the Jewish communities in the diaspora, mainly in Poland and also in Morocco and Italy and in Holland, later in England, and also later in America, but also in Egypt, in Turkey, in Iran, even in Central Asia, in India, and later on in Australia. The main Jewish communities in the land of Israel were in Jerusalem, in Hebron, in Safed, and Tiberias. They were called the four holy cities. And those communities were sending messengers sometime every year to various Jewish communities around the world. And they were collecting donations that were already collected for them by the communities a year before that or 2 years before that. And the messengers from the land of Israel will just come and collect those donations and bring them to the land of Israel. And this way, the community of Safed, the community of Tiberias, for example, will support its members, its elders, its orphans, its children, and the widowers, also mainly people that were studying the Torah, the Talmud. And also they had to pay debt. The Jewish communities in the land of Israel were deep in debt to the Ottomans and to the Arabs and to the Christians, because they were constantly oppressed by the Ottomans, and they had to pay all sorts of taxes, like jizya taxes that non-Muslims were paying, and also other taxes that were imposed on them, and tariffs, and sometimes punishment that were imposed on them just because the local ruler wanted some money. And they were, of course, they were helpless. They could not fight against the Ottomans, as the Ottomans didn't allow them to carry weapon. So they were very vulnerable, and their way to stay alive and keep their head over the sea was to collect those donations and to pay off whatever is needed. So have a look at that. This is the map of the land of Israel, but as you can see, the flag of Israel represents the four holy cities. From the north, you have Safed, and you have Tiberias, and then you have Jerusalem, and you have Hebron. Each of those cities has two dominant communities, one Ashkenazi and the other one Sephardi. The tradition to send messengers from the land of Israel to the diaspora exists already in the Roman period, when the Nasi, the head of the Sanhedrin, was sending messengers to collect the half a shekel that was usually collected for the temple from the communities overseas, and that money was sent to the Nasi. But the Romans hindered this distribution of money from the communities, and it ending up. So there were only messengers were sent from Israel to the diaspora, usually for collection of other donations. In the Arab period, it was mainly for the collection of poor people, in Jerusalem and in Tiberias, and later in the Mamluk period, you have collections. In the beginning, it was collection for Torah students in Jerusalem, in Hebron, in Safed, and later Tiberias. But later on, in the end of the Mamluk period, when the Jewish communities was actually under great stress under the Muslim occupation, and the Jewish communities in Israel needed funds in order to pay off terrible punishment that were imposed on it by the Arabs. Only then they started to collect money from the diaspora on the specific cases in order to support generally to finance the Jewish community. So when it need to pay a lot of some of money to the Arabs because they want something and they want to punish the Jews for some reason, then they have some money to pay it off. As it was in the Mamluk period, when the Mamluk decided one day that they want all the Jews to convert to Islam, and the Jews sent Rabbi 24. It was called Rabbi Moshe 24 for some reason. Apparently, it's the name of a place in Germany. And he actually went and he went to Poland, he went to Germany, he went to Italy, and he collected quite a lot of money. And thanks to that money that they was paying to the Mamluks, the Jewish community didn't have to convert to Islam. And this tradition continued afterwards, that the Jewish communities were sending messengers, both Ashkenazim and both Sephardim, and the communities were generously collecting money from their members. So when the messenger was coming from Israel, they would accommodate him. They will give him a lot of honor and a lot of stature, and they will donate him. Especially it was during holidays, they will even donate even more, and then he will come back to the Jewish communities in Hebron, in Safed, in Jerusalem, in Tiberias, and he can provide for his community. And this thing continued basically until the end of the 19th century, and also until the end, basically until the rise of Zionism. Yes. In this picture, this is Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai. He was born in Jerusalem in the year 1724, and he died in the city Livorno in Italy in 1804. He was a messenger of the city Hebron, and he went to Turkey. He also went to Italy, and he went to Holland and other places. And he collected donation for the Jewish communities in the land of Israel, and he also was involved in other spiritual issues that was interested for the Jewish community all over the world. And he's actually a very famous land of Israel Jewish personality in the 18th century. After the Romans conquered Judea and they subdued it after the Jews revolted for the second time, the Jewish communities in the land of Israel slowly become smaller and smaller, and in the 5th century they also become a minority in the land of Israel, because the majority became a Christian, right? Because there was Christian immigration to the land of Israel. Also, there were some Jews that converted to Christianity, and then the Arab conquered the land, and the population was kind of like constant. There was some immigration of Jews from Babylonia to the land of Israel. And there was some period of time that the situation was actually not so bad. Sometimes it was good, but in the end of the Arab period, in the 11th century, the Jewish community suffered from a lot of great violence from the Arabs, and then came the Crusaders in the year 1099, 1100, and they massacred most of the Jews in the land of Israel. So what happened is that during the Crusade period, there were immigration of Jewish communities from Europe, the same Jews that were exiled by the Romans 900 years before that. They became big Jewish communities, the Sephardim and the Ashkenazim, and they started to return to the land of Israel, mainly from France and from Italy, and later also from England. And slowly, already in the end of the Crusade period, there were two major Jewish communities in Israel, Sephardim and Ashkenazim. Ashkenazim were mainly Germans and Italians, and Sephardim were from Spain. And the original Jewish communities, they were called Mustarabim, and which means like Arabs. And the reason for that is that during the end of the Crusade periods, and also in the end of also during the Mamluk period, the Jews had to conceal their identity in order to sustain a normal way of life, because the Mamluks were very strict and they oppressed the Jews and they oppressed the Christians. So in order to kind of like blend in and to attract less attention from the Arabs or from Muslims, they dressed like Arabs. So, and this is why when the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim came, they called those Jews, they called Mustarabim, which means like Arabs. Even though they were Jews, they dressed like Arabs. But those communities, they very fast they merged to the Ashkenazim and to the Sephardim communities. So during the Mamluk period, you see this separation between Sephardim and Ashkenazim, two dominant communities that live together side by side, most of the time depending on one another. And also when you need to pay the tab, also they had to pay the tab. So also they got to some argument about that. But when you come to the end of the Mamluk period, you have also very big Sephardi immigrations from Spain and Portugal, because the Spanish and the Portuguese, they expelled their Jews. So a big chunk of them came also to the land of Israel. And so very fast, during the Ottoman period, the majority of the Jews in the land of Israel were actually Sephardim. But there were a lot of changes in the society that what happened is that the Jews had to basically find refuge in the four holy cities in Jerusalem, because it was so dangerous to be outside of those cities, because you are a Jew, you cannot carry a weapon, because the Muslim doesn't allow you to carry a weapon, and you have to pay a lot of taxes and stuff like that. So unless you were part of a community, you couldn't even sustain yourself. In most cases, there were some exemption from that. There were Jews in Jaffa, there were Jews in Akko, there were Jews in Gaza, that they were a bit better off. They were not as oppressed. But if you were in Jerusalem, you had to be a part of the community. Also Hebron, Safed, and Tiberias as well. So those were the places, if you wanted to live as a Jew, a Torah observant Jew, you would stay in those cities. Also, you will live under the welfare of the society itself. And this is why you have this in the Ottoman period. You have this thing that the Jewish community in the land of Israel is a thing. It is basically preserving the nation of Israel, living in the four holy cities. They were calling themselves Kehilot Kodesh, communities of holiness, holy communities. And the Jews in the diaspora address them as holy communities, those Jews that may maintain, they're guarding the holy sites, and because they live over there where God is having mercy on us, and so on and so on and so on. But during this time, there was also a migration of Jews from Europe and other places to the land of Israel. But almost all the time, there were Jews that were messianic. So basically Jews that had this messianic idea that if you go to the land of Israel, the Messiah will come. Those were usually the Jews that were coming to the land of Israel during the Ottoman period until the rise of modern Zionism. Yes.